what I didn't want was to become a Netflix for art. We really should have a point of view, and we should really create a context for audiences in how and why they're experiencing a work of art.
Hello, and welcome to Art Goes On, a podcast featuring art people on how they keep the art world running. Here, they will share their vision of the present and a glimpse of the future. I'm your host, Pierre de Montesquieu, recording from Paris, France, so please, pardon my English. Before we start, as we try to make this show interactive, here's a quick reminder to follow our Instagram account, at AskArtGoesOn, where you'll be able to ask questions to upcoming guests. Now, on to today's show. Today my guest is Rajendra Roy, Chief Curator of Film at the MoMA, New York. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So Raj, how art is going for you?
Well, art is ever more essential, I would say, even as it's facing an existential crisis in terms of being able to experience art together. I think if we did not have art as part of our culture, as part of our society, we would be even more lost and even more lonely right now. So it's a great comfort to be immersed in art, even if it's from a distance from others. I, especially with cinema, prefer to experience that art form collectively, right? I have lived many lives, and certainly my entire professional life, to make sure that we can all gather to celebrate the great works of cinema in a theater. And that loss is very painful now, and honestly has gone from terrifying to very motivational to try and get back into the cinemas as soon as possible. But the biggest comfort is knowing that we have over 100 years of great works to celebrate together. And that's really been, again, the best comfort.
The MoMA has embraced digital for many years, offering a huge amount of content online. They've recently launched virtual views and communicated through the hashtag Museum for Home. Does the museum discover something new on how to address the public in this situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our digital efforts are many years in the planning, and our MoMA magazine, which is our online portal through the website, has been active for many years. But obviously, in this moment, it's become vital, right? It's become the critical link to our many publics. And I think the most important for me is that we maintain some sort of authenticity. MoMA, there was so much pressure. Well, you should just stream every movie in the collection. You should make available every work of art in the collection. And honestly, many of them are available either through MoMA's website or through other streaming sites. But what I didn't want was to become a Netflix for art. We really should have a point of view, and we should really create a context for audiences in how and why they're experiencing a work of art. And I have to say, I'm quite proud of what we've been able to put out so far through our new virtual views program. It's not just, hey, look at all this art. It's let's look together at this very specific either artist or group of work and experience that in a new way, and hopefully enliven a conversation. So, again, everybody wanted to get things out virtually and stream as much as possible. I think for MoMA, it was more important to try and stay a bit authentic to our mission and to what people might experience if they were able to come to the actual museum right now.
You have an online programmation of live Q&As. How people are responding to it?
It's been wonderful, and it's really grown in interest. I did the first new one just over a month ago with our home movie show, and it was a small audience, and it was almost like a fireside chat, like a very intimate chat between a colleague who I hadn't seen in a few weeks, and the hundreds of people that join. Now we have thousands of people joining every week. And I think that there is just an indication of how hungry people are for interesting, relatable conversation about something other than this damn disease. There really is an interest in art and art making, and I think that we've been really pleased with that ability to connect with our audiences.
And do you think it opened things to a new public you were not addressing before?
Well, what it certainly has done is make sure that in a moment when tourism is not a possibility, and the return to, a robust tourist visitation in New York City, for example, is quite far off, probably, that we are still able to reach every corner of the world. And that's been something remarkable to notice, is that our online visitation, especially for the conversations, has been truly global. So we can tell in real time that there are people from Australia and Italy and, Spain and South America, and, across the United States are all joining simultaneously. And so that ability to connect across borders is really gratifying, and in a way a relief that we haven't all just retreated to our corners, even though we're all staying home, which we must do. We are also really eager to connect with people from around the world. And if art can be that gathering place, very happy for that to be the case. I mean, for MoMA, more than 70% of our visitation annually is international guests, people who are not local. Our cinema audiences are very local, which I'm very proud of. I love our New Yorkers. But, most of our visitors are from outside of the US. And again, that's going to take a long time to come back. So if we can maintain contact with people, I think the digital sphere for us will become even more important.
Did MoMA had the opportunity to try new stuff that they never had time to do before?
This new push to connect digitally has really been an opportunity for the teams that have been focused on this, but it's pushed people who had never ever worked in a digital realm. Many of my colleagues, my curatorial colleagues, who have never held a digital chat or tried to do a Zoom meeting, for example, that has certainly pushed them. And I think there will be a comfort level. It's been painful. It's been very difficult convincing some colleagues that this is a worthwhile thing to do. But once they've done it, I think they have agreed that it is actually very reassuring to know that it's still possible to connect. So maybe that's the biggest surprise for all of us, is that it's even convinced the most conservative of our colleagues that this new digital realm is essential.
Okay, so this is something you're going to implement once you reopen?
We definitely understand that this is the new reality that we will have, even when we are able to reopen, which hopefully will be, at some point later in the summer. Our digital presence will continue. So it's not like when the doors reopen, the digital retracts or retreats. We will maintain two courses. They will be parallel, and each will provide unique opportunities. I mean, I think right now, most of our digital exhibitions have been related to exhibitions that either were on view or would be on view at MoMA right now. But very shortly, you'll have brand new exhibitions created only for the digital realm that would not be possible in a traditional gallery setting or in a traditional cinema. So that new era, I think, will be very exciting as well, that you'll have both the traditional analog, let's say, gallery and cinema experience, and then you'll have the brand new digital experience which will be totally, totally different.
Did you already discuss different reopening options?
We are very much in that process. And the great thing, in a way, although New York has suffered terribly, perhaps more than any major Western capital or center, we also will have the benefit of learning from what is happening in Asia as those museums reopen, and then in Europe as your museums open. So we won't have to invent this. And we are paying very close attention to what's happening there, and also taking into account the differences with an institution like MoMA, which had 3 million visitors a year when we, were last open. So obviously it won't be that, but how do you operate a building that's so big and so used to having so many people when that won't be possible? In a way, I see the cinemas as a more straightforward challenge. It will be a huge challenge, but the seating will be assigned and you can keep people apart because the seats are fixed and you're not moving around the cinema like you're walking around a gallery. But all of this will require great planning, and it's already underway. And again, we're learning from all of our colleagues around the world.
You've been talking about the mission of MoMA to offer a curated experience. How did the Department of Film play a role in that since the reopening after the renovation?
The thing that was truly new when we reopened in last October was that every medium, every art practice that MoMA had focused on for the last nearly 90 years was included in the history of modernism in our galleries. Meaning, when you visit, you will start chronologically at the end of the 19th century, if you choose to start at the beginning, and you will see alongside the earliest examples of modernist painting, earliest examples of early photography and film and design, etc. So the new thing for film was to be basically everywhere in the museum. So not only in our cinemas, but also in our galleries. And everyone immediately, in a way, recognized how essential that was, because to get a true picture of what modernism is, you can't keep out the original modern art forms, right? Photography and film, the reproducible image and the motion picture. So one of the things I miss the most is those early galleries where you have films from the origin of our medium playing alongside Van Gogh and Cézanne and the acknowledged great masters of modernism, and introducing those cinematic voices to that early period. And that continues, of course, through the history of MoMA's display of modernism.
Currently, you have a home movie exhibition. Do you think that you're the lucky department of MoMA since you have a medium that fits perfectly the screens?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I do remind my team often that as painful as this moment is truly for our field, people are wondering if anyone will ever go back into the theater. The great thing is everybody's watching movies now, right? So at MoMA, our artwork can be easily consumed over the internet. But I'm actually really looking forward also to the moment when people can go back in, obviously to watch a film together, but to be in the galleries where the home movie show, which it seems to me anyway, translated very well to the digital realm. People can go back and also experience that exhibition again in real life in a physical space. And in a way, I think it will have new life. And those very personal stories that are captured on amateur films will feel even more precious, both because we will have lost so many lives, but also because they will have endured, they will have made it through that period. And so, yeah, I think we're all looking very much forward to revisiting our friends who are silent and dark in the galleries now, but will come back to life when we return.
And how did you build the home movie show considering our digitized era?
So this was an example of translating a pre-digital art form, right? So we really focused on the pre-video era of home movies. So Super 8 film, 8mm film, 16mm film for the most part. And all of that material had to be scanned and digitized. So in a way, again, this exhibition was perfectly primed for digital presentation, because in order to even show the material, we already had to transfer it to a digital format. And I think that will be on people's consciousness even more now. It was a bit of a battle as we were planning for the reopening of MoMA to help our colleagues who maybe were sculpture curators or drawings curators, for example, when they wanted to include a film in their gallery, which we were very happy about and wanted to help them, but to help them understand, even though it was in MoMA's collection, even though we had a film print of Playtime by Jacques Tati, for example, that didn't mean we had a digital version of that. And in order to get from the film print that we had to the digital version they would need for display in the gallery, there's a big process. And what that process involves is very technical, very expensive, very time consuming. And so I think maybe this will help everyone understand now how critical the transfer of analog art forms to digital is in this new era. And it won't just be the film preservationists and archivists who are focusing on the challenges of digital preservation. It will be a more global kind of attention to those types of challenges.
And you have made available online celebrities' home videos as well as family movies.
Exactly. I mean, I think that, what was critical for us with that exhibition specifically, and I think especially now, is, not to forget that there are miraculous stories in normal life as well. And times like these really make us remember the things that we miss when we can't live what we thought was a normal life. This is something, like birthday parties or weddings, or bar mitzvahs or whatever it is that was always filmed in the same way, seemingly very banal. And now we realize how precious those times are and how easily they can be taken away. So yeah, it's not just, obviously Charlie Chaplin and Salvador Dali doing dances in their gardens is wonderful and brings smiles to every face, but also those moments, very, very intimate family moments, are something that we are cherishing right now.
You've made an open call online for testimonies. Did anyone recognize something familiar in those videos?
Plenty of people have been inspired to go through their own attics or closets or basements and look for those materials and look for those memories contained on the films. I don't think we've had any what we would call a Zapruder moment, right? So those home movies have now created history by the kind of discoveries contained in them. But it's not too late. I'm sure that will also continue to happen.
You are a lot in contact with people in the film industry. What is the state of mind out there?
Everybody wants to get back to work. I've heard stories of people actually making entire feature films on Zoom through Zoom chats, and there's this new rediscovery of multi-screen narratives, so you can tell stories through different, not just one frame, but multiple frames. So I think there will be some new invention that comes out of this period. Hopefully interesting, a lot of probably totally uninteresting, but that's normal when things evolve. And I think most of all, people just, those of us who run cinemas, who run theaters, our biggest concern is making sure that experience doesn't die now, right? Yes, of course, it's proven that people will watch films from home on any device. And we knew that before this, and now it's 100% for sure. And so the industry, as soon as people can go back to work making new films, they will, because we know people will consume them. They will be engaged in it, whatever manner. But we have to fight very hard to make sure that the theatrical presentation survives this moment. And so many of us are working very hard, not only to support the cinemas while they're closed and everyone who works in cinemas and is out of work now, but then making sure that we're all strong enough. As many of us, some won't survive, sadly, but those of us that are strong enough to survive, that we're ready and welcoming to audiences as soon as it's safe.
As a lot of movies have been postponed, is there a fear of overload after the lockdown?
Everybody I've spoken to wants to spend 10 hours a day watching every new film they can in a cinema. So, I think the bigger challenge will be getting our capacity up and getting the cinemas safe enough to accommodate as many people as will be desperately interested to get back into them. And I think the studios and the distributors will have to pace themselves. They will do that out of self-interest anyway, because the interest is in making money. And if the rooms are overcrowded or if there's not enough screens, then they'll have to wait. But and there will be this period of no production. So hopefully there's a balance. So by the time we get back to an era where new films have been able to be made and are ready for distribution, things have been paced out of what's waiting to be distributed.
Is there an answer to the debate between the streaming experience and the theater experience?
If I had the answer, first I would tell Thierry Frémaux, because poor Thierry is always on the forefront of this battle, trying to navigate the forces of digital progress and cinema culture. But no, in seriousness, I think, obviously there's no escaping the Netflix reality, right? And I mean that not specifically for that one company, but the streaming reality, let's say. But at the same time, there is something very essential about gathering together to experience an art form. It's an essential human experience. And that goes back, to ancient Greece and, coming to an amphitheater to watch live theater. So that won't go away. And we just all have to be smart and level-headed about it. I don't think there's any winning or losing, other than if we lose the experience of collective viewing, then something will really have been lost from human culture.
Galleries, fairs, auction houses, or even artists in the traditional visual arts gather to show or even to sell work through viewing rooms. Have you heard about such an initiative in the movie industry?
Yeah, I mean, there's actually a lot of efforts to support both independent film and independent art house cinemas, at least in the US, where a film will be released digitally, and part of the profits, if there are some, from that release will also benefit the theater that would have shown the film. So I think it's a very interesting concept. I know it's just early days still, but that might be something that moves on. So you have a choice. You could go and see it at your local cinema, or you can watch it online. But either way, the cinema will be supported by the release of the film. So people are inventing, people are trying new things, and I think in the end, as long as there's a balance and as long as the theaters survive, I'm in favor of whatever works.
And were you surprised by any particular behavior or practice by the art world otherwise?
The surprising thing is the fact that people haven't just retreated, that there is this now movement to really get to work and to be inventive. I mean, it's part of the nature of the pioneer effort that artists have always had, right? They're always the first ones out there trying new things. But honestly, the challenge is so great. Just think of all the artists who had gallery exhibitions planned in this period that are just, it's not possible. Think of all the filmmakers who had films ready for release, and all of the kids who were in university studying to enter a field that basically doesn't exist right now. And none of these people, to my knowledge, has given up. I mean, yes, there are moments where you're really depressed and the challenge seems too great, but the spirit to survive and continue is stronger, and I think that has been the best surprise.
To move on to the last part of the show and to start with the questions from our audience, Maximilian is interested in Nathaniel Dorsky's work.
Okay.
And he wants to know if you plan to digitize more of his work, as you did with 17 Reasons Why, and if it will be accessible to the public.
Well, it's an excellent question and observation from Maximilian. And believe us, we all felt in the film department that was the biggest miracle of MoMA's entire reopening in October, was that Dorsky agreed to have one of his films digitized. This seemed like the last filmmaker on earth who would allow this to happen, both because of his deep embrace and real eye for the specific nature of celluloid, but also just a mistrust of the quality of a digital transfer. And the fact that we were able to make him happy, and he said so, that he was happy with this transfer, gave us both great pride, but also enthusiasm to continue on this. So I would say absolutely yes. And, I think it will involve working with artists and testing their comfort level with how these works are presented. But as soon as we have a comfort level, and many experimental filmmakers are very comfortable at this point with digital presentation, online streaming, etc. So I would say the opportunity to see more and more experimental films online will only increase dramatically in the years to come.
I think that Maximilian will be happy about that.
I hope so.
Another question from Justin, who wants to know what movie not well received at its release was a memorable rediscovery for you, and how?
Well, one film in particular that I've actually been thinking about and talking about and writing a bit about recently is very much in that category, and that's David Lynch's Dune, which even Lynch himself, I think to this day, does not think of as a successful film, and certainly was not a commercial success when it was first released. It has now, of course, become a cult film, but actually has spoken to me in quite profound ways. I mean, I've been a fan of the film for years, and am a huge fan of Lynch, of course, and I understand why he has rejected it. I mean, it was a very painful experience to make by all accounts, and certainly not the film he intended to deliver. But it is, in a way, even with all of its disjointedness and, obvious kind of intervention by producers who wanted the more Star Wars experience or whatever, it's this crazy fever dream of a film. And I have found that science fiction is a wonderful place to escape these days. You asked about a work of art that I've been interested in, or, that has really spoken to me in this moment. And I would say, science fiction generally, but certainly Dune specifically has been very comforting, because it is all about overcoming fear. First of all, the narrative is really about one young person, one young man, not allowing fear to control his destiny, not to let fear control his mind. And when so many things are out of control in our lives, finding things that we can find inner strength to control is, I think, a great inspiration. But also just this wild idea of, a life so far beyond and unexpected, and adventures yet to come. It's a story of a young man who thought his path was very clear in front of him, and then life gave him unbelievably huge challenges, and he created a super existence for himself out of something that he never could have dreamed of before those challenges arrived. So maybe a great parable for our time, let's see, but certainly that's been one work that has unexpectedly or has risen to the top of my list recently.
We can send our best wishes to Denis Villeneuve then.
Yeah, I mean, Denis is a great challenge, and I'm sure he's aware that he's remaking yet another cult film. I mean, his Blade Runner has lots of fans, but obviously the original is not to be replaced. And with Dune, maybe he has less cult fans to deal with than he did with Blade Runner, but I have every confidence in his ability.
Rajendra, thanks again 1,000 times for being with us today.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Take care, and hope to see you soon in flesh. Bye.
Be safe. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Art Goes On. If you liked what you heard, feel free to follow and share the show on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, or on YouTube. Leave a rating or review to help people find the show. Thanks again.